a short film celebrating the 50th anniversary of Rathmullan Post Office, County Donegal, in its present location under the stewardship of John and Bernadette Kelly over the years.
Well, before we took over, the post office was run by Mrs. Tommy Kerr, who ran it from 1937 until 1971. We took over on D-Day, February 1971, and we have it right up to this moment in time, which is 50 years. And over those 50 years, we've seen a lot of changes. When we took it over, there were two major things that were here then and not now. We were a telephone exchange as well as a post office. The business of the post office has changed a bit over the years, but the biggest change we have seen is the price of a stamp was 4p the day we took over. The price of a stamp today is £1 or €1. Now the other thing is the post office in those years, it took 4 people to run it. Today it takes 1. The reason there were 4 then was there were 2 telephone operators and 2 counter assistants. But now it's a 1-person operation, and the business is certainly going down, it's not going up. And we had 2 postmen, and we had a third one brought on as an auxiliary at Christmas.
So when did you start working in the post office?
I started on the 14th of February 1971, and that was decimal day. And a lady called Alice Dugan came over from Kincashla to train us. She'd been there for a couple of days before, but she stayed with us for a month till we got used to all the ins and outs of it.
What did that training involve, and can you describe a bit more of your job at the beginning?
It was all very basic compared to what it is now. We didn't have any of these screens and things up here, and we did stamps, we did social welfare payments. There was some savings bank, but there wasn't all the stuff that we have now. It was pretty basic.
And it was yourself and Maura?
It was myself and Maura were here. Maura was here for 2 years, and I was quite a lot longer.
You said it was a lot more manual in the beginning. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Well, everything was done, it was all paper based. So the pensions and all the social welfare payments were all dockets that were torn out of pension books, up until pretty recently. And all that had to be counted by hand. And the accounts and all were all done by hand. There was no sending through on computer or anything. So it was very time consuming, and it had to be exactly accurate because the post office didn't allow for mistakes or anything.
It was in 1971, D-Day it was called, because it was also Decimalisation Day, and as far as I remember it was 14th of February 1971. So it was quite an auspicious day between us opening in the post office and also dealing with the new system of money.
Can you tell me a bit more about that and what your job was like?
Well, the main job we had was dealing with the public at the counter, which was very important because at that time more people used services, that it was the focal point in the town, and people used it for pension payments and dole payments and savings banks and then buying stamps and stuff. So it was, it was a much busier time in the post. Oh, well, I don't know what it's like today, but at the time it was very busy. People came in to see out of curiosity, I would think, as well, see how we managed, because they were used to the old place, and they wanted to see were we able and willing to carry on in the standards. But we had Alice Duggan from Kincashla came to train us, and she was very thorough, and she covered, I think she prepared us well. You know, she stayed here for maybe a month altogether. So, because every week we had to do a cash balance, and you obviously had to make the, you know, for the accounts that then would be forwarded to Letterkenny. So it covered a lot as regards counter work. We had to sign the Official Secrets Act because we were dealing with people's confidential business. I think that still stands. Once you sign it, you're in it for life, as far as I know, and it always stood to me. You'd be discreet with people's business and everything. You wouldn't discuss it outside the business situation. What else did we had the counter rules for the post office, which was based on the Department of Posts and Telegraphs 1922 counter manual, which was passed on from the old post office, which was we did the post. It was like people sent more letters then, I would imagine. People were in the habit of writing letters every week. So the post kept us very busy. We would empty the post box in the post office, and we'd have to sort it into cubby holes for Ireland and Britain and international. We'd have to date stamp them, and then we'd put them in bundles and put them in the sack for the mail car to pick it up at 4 o'clock. And at night time John would have to empty the post box again, and he would have to date stamp all the letters, and you would hear him thumping away on the table with great gusto, just getting the date stamp right. So I suppose it was a way of working off a bit of frustration or whatever, but yeah, I do remember that. With we also had registered post, which we had to put a seal on it. So we had a red sealing wax which you had to melt, and then you date stamped the letter or the parcel depending, and then it went into a special bundle.
And at Christmas it was mad. And the incoming mail, or sorry, not the incoming mail, but the outgoing mail, you know, people had posted stuff here. There was so much of that. I myself used to sort that because it had to be sorted into different regions, you know. And some of the things that went through the post were quite extraordinary, like turkeys. And there'd be blood coming out of paper. Things like that.
I'm sorry, what? Turkeys?
Turkeys at Christmas, sir. Yeah. I don't know where they were. England, that didn't have turkeys for some reason.
Yeah, the switchboard was here too. That was a big part of the work. There wasn't that many phones at that stage, probably maybe 50, 60. But it was pretty busy, like 24 hours. Maura did some of it, I did some of it, but it was nice because we were in contact with people, and once it went automatic in 1983, we kind of lost the personal touch. Like way back then, like the local doctor, if he was going out on calls, he would call up and he would say, "I'm going to this house and this house, and if there's an emergency or anything in the meantime, you know where to get me." I mean, you wouldn't do that now. Data protection would have a field day.
Well, we then did the switchboard, which was 24 hours. It was constant service. It was very busy because we didn't have direct lines then. It was manual with cords. They called them eyes on the switchboard would fall down, and you would see which number was ringing, and you'd plug in the cord to answer it. And we would have to ring Letterkenny, which was the main exchange, and we would book the call with them. And they, in turn, if it was to Dublin or to Britain, they would have to ring Dublin, and if it was then to Britain, they would have to ring the exchange, which was based in Liverpool or London, depending. And if it was an international call, they would have to get onto the international exchange in Dublin. And it caused, when it was during the summer period or at Christmas and that, it would cause delays on calls, like up to 4 or 5 hours at a time, which seems extraordinary this day and age, that you could be waiting 5 hours to ring Britain, And you could imagine people's reaction when they came here on holiday, staying in the hotels, which were very busy. Pew Hotel, Rathmullan House, Fort Royal, and then people staying about. They found it very hard to accept that it would be 5 hours before they could ring home or whatever, but that was the way it was then. And so that kept us very busy. You had to write out tickets, a recording, the length of time they were on and the numbers they were on to. At certain times, if we ever had lightning, for example, thunder and lightning, because we had the frame with the cables for the phone cables, frame in the switchboard room, the lightning, it was copper cable, so the lightning had on occasions would hit the copper cable and you would see the flash of lightning come down to earth right beside, we were sitting beside it, but that was all part of the job. We didn't realise how dangerous it could be at that really now in thinking back, it wouldn't be acceptable these days, I would imagine. And also if there was an electricity strike, which we did have quite a few times for, maybe storm damage, the place would be in darkness. So the switchboard would kick into a support battery and the switchboard would still be able to operate. But we'd be sitting in the dark and we'd have either an oil lamp or a candle or something so we could see what we were doing. It was all very spooky at times, especially in the winter in the dead of night.
In terms of, for example, if somebody didn't have a phone in their house and they received a call through the switchboard, could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, if we were able, if they were in the village, yes, we would get somebody to go and tell them, we'd notify them, and there was a public phone here in the post office in the corner with a kind of a plastic hood over it. It wasn't very private, but people would use it, and we would get somebody called to the house and say, to ring, and they would come in, or they would ring them back at a certain time. Yeah, we did sort of go like that sort of personal touch was part of the service we gave. I mean, for example, Bridie Canning next door, when she had her shop up at the Bray there, if she wasn't there, the travellers would come for, maybe deliveries, and she wasn't in the shop, and they would ring us and ask where she was. And a couple of times I remember we had the window out the back, we said, no, she's down the garden hanging her clothes out, and we'd go out and tell her, Bridie, they're looking for you, so there was always that personal, we'd go out of our way to, because it was quite, people didn't have phones, not everyone had a phone in their house, so it was quite a vital link, and if there were calls for people, we would go and notify them and tell them,
There was a phone box in the corner, and because the majority of people didn't have phones, it was fairly busy and people would come in to make phone calls. Some of them weren't too used to making phone calls, so we made the phone call for them, got them through, and then they talked away. Yeah, it was different.
My work really was the telephone. It was a 24-hour business, the telephone, 7 days a week. So I worked it from 2 in the morning to 6 in the morning, always. Well, nearly always anyhow.
Yeah, I would work mostly on the phones. I didn't really do a counter in those early days. And it was quite busy, it became busier obviously as the years went on. It was a 24-hour service, 365 days a year. So we used to have some altercations about it in the evening time, maybe who was going to answer that wretched phone. I was right. John, I must admit, mostly at nights, from 12 o'clock right through. It wouldn't be busy, but one phone call was enough to waken the entire house because it was a very loud bell. In the summertime when the visitors were here, it was extremely busy. And it was quite, it was quite funny really in a way, because there was a call box down in Pier Road opposite Amballan Way, and people would ring from there to make phone calls, and God help them if it came from outside of Ireland, because the chances of getting a call through in any reasonable time were nil. So people would ring to want to make a call to Glasgow, and then I'd get on to Letterkenny. I rang Letterkenny, which is the main exchange. They would say to me, will you inform the caller there's a 3-hour delay, which I would do, and the next thing you'd hear, what? I can't stand here for 3 hours. And that sort of thing was awful. And then we got the boats and the fishing boats, the foreign fishing boats. When they came in, I can't remember what year that was, but it was bedlam, because they were 24 hours on the phone. They were staying in the Pier Hotel, most of them, you know, the guys, and they were ringing hauliers, you know, ordering the lorries, come on, there's boatloads of fish here waiting for you. So that was absolute mayhem. John was on that, I don't know how he did it, but anyway, eventually they took pity on us and posted. It wasn't on post then, I think it was Post and Telegraph. And they gave the Pier Hotel 2 lines, outside lines, so they could bypass us, which was great. As far as I remember, we had a huge number of people working the switchboard. You know, when Moira left, and if I was here, I would be doing it during the day, but if I wasn't, or I couldn't, or whatever, we would employ people. But Martin, when he came to a certain age, I'm not sure, was he? It's probably about 5. But anyway, he would do the switchboard. So when we became automatic then, which was brilliant, in 1983, I think, it was a different job.
And you placed, that last call on the switchboard?
Oh yes, I did, yeah. Yeah, now unfortunately I can't remember who it was to, but I did, and then the switchboard, which I thought was an awful shame, was sent to Edinburgh, to a museum. I thought they should have kept it here in Ireland, but they reckon they know where to keep it. So could have kept it in my shed. But anyway, yeah. So after that then, when we became automatic, it was a 9-to-5 job, which was great.
We lost the telephones in 1983, which was a great relief really to us all, because it was a tough job. I mean, at present, 24 hours a day.
And especially, I think, doing the manual phones, as you said, the switchboard, you'd be in contact with people a lot.
We were, yeah. We kind of lost all that, and we lost it all in like one day, because it was one day the switchboard was here, and then there was they transferred it over to the manual system. Actually, I transferred it over. The Department of Posts and Telegraphs had it all set up over in the Exchange, which is over in the back street there, and I was invited over to pull the switch, which was nice.
So you pulled the switch, and what did...
It changed the whole system from being manual to being automatic, and then they could dial from their own phones.
Telegrams, yes, unfortunately some of them were bad news, which wasn't always very pleasant. We would have to write it out and deliver it in special envelopes. We get them obviously at weddings. When the hotels had weddings, we'd be very busy those days, because you could have about 30-40 telegrams or more, so you'd have to get somebody to deliver them, and usually the postman or John, or as long as it's somebody, Martin, somebody reliable, that I think he got 6pence or something for delivery. So yeah, we did the telegrams as well, yeah.
And also we had telegram service in those days, and you got 6pence for each telegram you delivered. So the girls, if any came at the weekend and Saturday, they'd be fighting over it. I'll deliver it. We, our postman Eamon McBride called at his house. Martin was 8, I think. And he had a little a tricycle, and he used to go around with Eamon.
Well, the two major changes were the phones going automatic, and then the computerisation of the account system. That changed everything. A lot of new business. There's a lot of banking in it now. You can pay almost all your bills in the post office. It's just a whole different environment.
And so you became the postmistress in what year, and could you talk a bit about that change and how your role within the post office changed?
1991, yeah, September. I don't know what changed. It was the best day of my life, I suppose, really, when I think back, but I didn't appreciate it. I didn't really work any much. I did work in the post office on a Saturday, I always did Saturdays, and obviously any time Angela was off, not that she was off very often.
How many sick days have you had in the last 50 years?
Not very many. I've luckily not been sick too often. So I'd say in all that time, probably about a month.
It's a great employee. Sorry, so the mail moved to Milford as well, I
Oh
believe?
yeah, in 2007, yeah. Yeah, 2007. Yeah, that was quite a big move. Well, the banks, obviously, you know, the social welfare is a very important part of the post office, and they are desperately trying to have social welfare paid through banks, and you can get it paid through banks, but that's what's going to close the post office. If we lose social welfare, it wouldn't be viable to stay open, really, because, you know, well, it's the most of our trade. Paying bills as well. But over the years it's deteriorated a lot, yeah, it has. People do use banks much more.
The rate is going down is the banks are taking a lot of our business, which is aided by the government, who claim they want to save the post office, but they have a funny way of showing it. We had several postmen under 50 years here, but the principal postman here and served the community very well for 30 odd years was the late Eamon McBride. And we had a few other postmen before Eamon, namely Tommy Kerr, who was a postman here for many, many years, and Willie Cairns, that did the Carradone area for many, many years. And we must thank all those men very much for what was a tough job.
I transferred from Letterkenny DSU and it was June the 5th, 2005. So that makes, I'll be 14 years here now this June coming.
And who did you replace?
I replaced the late Eamon McBride. I think Eamon was over 30 years as a postman here now, and he was a great servant to the community, and I can only speak highly of Eamon. I mean, in my time, when I came here first, obviously I knew a lot of people in the area, but anybody I didn't, or any queries or any questions you ever had, Eamon's door was always open, and I mean, I can only speak very highly of him.
And can you tell us about your job as postman as well, please?
I think most people know what a postman does. We deliver letters, parcels, packets, whatever, but obviously it's not all ready for us. We go to head office in Letterkenny in the morning and prepare everything, and obviously now the biggest part of the business is parcels, so they all have to be scanned and accounted for, and it's just added a wee bit more to the job, but unfortunately letters aren't what they used to be. And
how's it changed since the pandemic started?
It's changed in that in Letterkenny, in that we all have different starting times now. Like normally I would have started at 6, it means I don't start 8 because for different reasons, and it's definitely more parcels because I think people are ordering online, but you can see how it's increased. Like the average day now you'd have 35, 40 parcels on a good day, maybe 90, whereas years ago it could have been 10, but definitely the letters have fallen down, you know. Quite a bit. But I mean, even for the pandemic, we would have brought out our pensions to people, we would have brought out shopping. I even brought telly bingo to people, you know, simple things like that. But
it's become a lot busier, would you say?
It has, especially for parcel post and returns. I mean, everyone who, maybe not everyone, but to me, the vast majority of people seem to order this stuff and then send it back, because it's unbelievable. But I mean, it's great. I mean, that's great to have this business, you know. And now with Brexit, of course, it's a bit more, slightly more complicated because, for example, parcels going to England, there's a lot of forms that have to be filled in, customs, and because they're not part of the EU anymore.
Now with the pandemic, the parcel post has trebled. People are ordering online, and people are posting more. It will survive, but maybe in a different way.
Yeah, I think everyone noticed how important the post office was, especially with everything being delivery. And
Yeah.
Have you noticed then people using the post office more?
Yeah, a lot more. And it's one of the few places that were open that you could go to, and it was kind of a little outing to go to the post office every now and again. Yeah, we did notice a big change. Postmen in particular noticed, because they were so busy.
I remember you said that there were days where you couldn't carry out the parcels to the postman because there were so many.
Yeah, there was days that we had lots. A lot of it is return and people ordering online and the clothes don't fit and they send it back. And
you only have to come here, especially on a Friday morning or Friday afternoon, to see people. Obviously, it's people aren't free to do it now, but in the normal times, I mean, it's where people meet up. It's where people collect money. It's where people pay their bills. And I mean, there's no bank. Banking can be done in the post office as well.
Oh, it definitely is. Like we, apart from doing the stamps and all the usual business, we would fill out forms for people, and we would, people that you used to seeing coming in for their pensions. If they didn't come in, you would be kind of wondering what happened to them, and there is a great social side to it.
Well, I do know that people like coming into the post office. They do enjoy, and on a Friday in particular, which is pension day, before the COVID thing, of course, when you could be, quite a few people in it all at one time, and everyone, what's the news, anything new in the village, or they talk, amongst themselves, and yeah, it was social. And I have spoken to people who haven't been out now because of this virus, and have said to me, God, I haven't been in Rathmullan for the last 3 or 4 months. I miss coming in for my pension, and stuff like that.
From your experience since then with Post Office, do you think they will survive?
Well, I would hope they would survive, because I think they always play an important part in any fabric of any rural, especially anywhere in cities too, because they are a focal point, and they've got a social obligation to provide a service for those who don't necessarily have the means or to look elsewhere, or to get online banking. Not everyone has access to that, so I think the post offices serve a very vital point in a village or in any community life, both in cities and in rural environment. Yeah, and it's as I say, people like to come in. It gives them a reason to leave the house, and they go to the post office, and then they do a bit of messages, and it's just part of the social fabric of any community. Yeah.
I don't know what the future will be like, because this decimalisation and not so much decimalisation but computerisation of a lot of the transactions, we're heading towards a cashless society, and the post office will become more relevant, less important rather, once that happens, because a lot of our clients at the moment are old people who don't do or use computers or don't use any of this modern technology, and once they die off, as they are unfortunately, the younger generation will be turning towards automation and all this other stuff that goes with it.
And do you think the post office will survive?
Yeah, it will. They've closed quite a few of the smaller ones, and maybe that'll improve the overall, but it's changing so much that if they don't move on, and change, then they'll just be, left behind. But there's lots of more business that we could get, and that probably will come.
I honestly think it's pretty bleak. I do. I can't see it. I don't think the government have any great interest. They say they have, but they haven't done anything very much. And the thing that will close the post office, of course, is when people stop using it. We need people to use the post office to keep it open.
And I mean, it would be a terrible loss not to have a post office, but hopefully Rathmullan will survive. You never know from one year to the next, what way it's going to go. And even as regards the postmen, nobody knows how long we're going to have postmen, because, as I say, we're going more like couriers. The post office and the whole network is a very, very important part of the Irish community.
Was it worth it? 50 years?
Well, I mean, whether it's worth it or not, Monica, it has happened, so there's no point in regretting it or whatever. But it was enjoyable enough. And you give us good service, to athletes. I hope we did it to the people of Rathmullan. And Angela was a very faithful servant. Angela has been here from day one. And there are not many people who stay 50 years in a not too well paid job. And they're a very responsible job, you know. So a lot of thanks, I would say, goes to Angela. And of course my good wife Bernadette, who more than much of a lot of the telephone business years ago, you know. They were probably a tough 12 years. Weren't that, you know, they weren't the most enjoyable of times, because when you think about it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and no let up, you know. It was quite tough. And finally, we would both like to thank the people of Rathmullan and surrounding areas for their wonderful support over the past 50 years.
Thank you again to the people of Rathmullan, and I hope you'll continue to support us. It's been a pleasure serving you all through the years. So, Sláinte Rathmullan.
Sláinte Rathmullan and surrounding area.
If you start.
And finally,
Big Bang order, Malty.
5, 4, 3, 2. No, mine.